Now that we've kind of gotten into the mind of our customers and really explored why people buy certain things, products, services, and why they don't, I want to also address the different types of customers that we're going to interact with. Now, in a different course, we're going to talk about what we call our customer avatar. And we're going to get into detail about our customer avatar because it's so important to understand who we're speaking to and where they're at in their phase of awareness before we communicate a message. But right now, I just want to be kind of broad with the different types of customers we're going to come into contact with as personal trainers, fitness professionals, gym owners, even salespeople. There are going to be 3 different broad categories of customers that we're going to interact with. And I'm just going to use experience as a way to categorize these different types of customers. So the first type of customer that we're going to interact with is someone who has absolutely no experience with exercise. They've avoided the gym their entire life. Maybe they were that guy or girl who just hated physical education, if they even had physical education. They didn't play sports. They just avoided any type of activity. And you've probably interacted with that type of person. We're going to come back to that type of person. The second type of person that you're going to interact with is someone who experienced exercise at some point in their life, but then life got in the way. And so at some point later in their life, they decide, you know what, I remember what it was like when exercise was such a big part of my life and how great that was. And so they get to a point where they say, I want that back. So that's going to be the second type of customer that you're going to have. So we'll call them level 1, level 2, and then now level 3. So the level 3 customer that we might interact with is someone who's been exercising consistently for a long period of time. So they're kind of your gym rats, they're your exercise enthusiasts, they're your people who are going out on runs and bikes, and they're going to the gym and they surf and they hike, they do all these different things. And I want you to think about these different levels, the level 1 who's completely inexperienced, the level 2 who had some experience previously and then life got in the way, and then the level 3 who's very experienced. And if we go back to the before and after and the barriers that we've been talking about in this customer journey, they're going to have very different motivating factors and very different barriers between the different levels of customers. So I want to talk about each one of them separately and just kind of go back to some of the things that I've already discussed with the different phases that people go through and how we can craft sales, marketing, and branding messages that are like magnets and influence people to our product or our service. So let's start with the level 1. That level 1, as I mentioned, has absolutely no experience with the gym or very, very little experience with the gym. If we think about what's motivating them to change, there could be any number of things, but they probably don't have the type of body that they like. They probably feel bad about themselves. Their self-esteem might not be very high. They're probably not able to do a lot of things. Maybe they're limited because they've got injuries, they're limited because they're overweight, they're limited by a bunch of different things. And something happens in their life that triggers them to say, I need to make a change. But think about how many barriers that type of person has. And I also want you to consider, do you think the barriers to self or the barriers to a product or service are going to be stronger for that level 1? My experience is, in most cases, that level 1 is really experiencing barriers to self that are extremely strong. So they don't want to go anywhere near the gym because it's so intimidating. They are so afraid of failure. They don't want to experience that. They maybe don't have time, but they are really just dealing with fear. Like, how much different is their life going to be? They can't really even see what's on the other side of those barriers. The barriers to your product or service might still be there, but I think we as personal trainers, we as fitness professionals and even gym owners need to really eliminate the barriers to self for that type of person. That type of person we need to make sure we create great engagement with. And in addition to that, what we need to do, especially with that level 1, when we're creating our sales, marketing, and branding messaging, is we need to give that type of person some type of immediate gratification that doesn't take a lot of work on their part. So let me say that again, especially with the level 1. We need to give them some type of immediate gratification, get them to envision that immediate gratification that doesn't take a lot of effort on their part. So we might create messaging with our sales and branding to get them to see that they're going to create just even new habits where they're going to start feeling better within the first week. It can't be 3 months away. It can't be 6 months away for that level 1. They need to be able to envision some way their life is going to be better almost immediately. So we want to create messaging to that type of person where they can see, I'm going to have gratification right away. It's too far away when we think about 3 months or 6 months, something like that. And there's a guy named, I believe his name is Todd Herman, that talks a lot about this immediate gratification that people need to have. They need to be able to see themselves in this new life, and they need to be able to kind of experience it even though they're not there yet. And it needs to have minimal effort to get there. So we might communicate to that type of person something like, look, I'm not asking you to change everything about your life. And I'm right now kind of thinking as a personal trainer, even though I've worked on the sales side and the management side within a gym. Most of our experience here at FitBiz was as personal trainers and managers of personal trainers and educators for personal trainers. So I'm thinking about things like, I don't need you to change your diet and start exercising 6 days a week and change every single thing in your life. All I want you to do is start walking twice a day to start with, and you're going to feel an immediate change in your life. That message is going to be received so much better than change everything and you're going to feel great in 6 months, because that's just going to make them back away. Again, we get into more detail with this in our execution plans, but I want you to be considering these things before we get into those execution plans, because it's going to make more sense when you get there. That second level of customer is someone who, let me back up. That level 1 customer needs to also be able to, when they're thinking about the after state, see that they're going to have a different body. They're going to feel more confident about themselves, even if it's just something small. They got one win. They for 2 weeks in a row walked 2 days a week. That's a big win. It gives them more confidence. It gives them more momentum. And when they feel more confident about themselves, when they have that more momentum, they're probably going to do better things. They're going to interact with their family more. They're going to get out in society. They're going to feel better about themselves. So that leads to doing more things. So level 2, again, this is the person that had exercise in their life at some point in time, but then life got in the way. So they know kind of how that feeling was. And I won't go into as much detail on this, but what I want you to be thinking of is what their haves are, what their feelings are, what their possible not able to do, or what they're doing in this before state. So it might be very similar to a level 1. They've let life get in the way. Now they just don't have the body that they're looking for, and they just feel like they're a shell of their previous self. They feel like they just have really given up on life almost. They've given up on just their fitness in general, and so they just don't feel good about that. And so maybe that's affecting their mood. It might be affecting their mental health. So that's going to be affecting a lot of things as far as what they can do, can't do, how productive they are at work, interacting with their family, and so on. They want the future state just like anyone else. They want to have a better body. They want to get that feeling back that they remember from before. Now, it still is important to give them that gratification, get them to see that gratification and kind of use imagery to kind of envision what's going to happen in the future with our sales and our marketing messages. And then what additional things they're going to be able to do. Sometimes with this level 2, it can happen with any level, but I found a lot of times with level 2s, the thing that got them back into the gym is they have some type of event coming up. It could be a wedding, it could be a reunion, it could be they have a trip, a vacation coming up, and so that's the thing that triggered them to get back in. And they know they could do it because they've done it before. They just have to channel it and really start using it. So when I'm using imagery for that type of person, I might say something like, I want you to imagine how great it's going to feel when you're able to go, get into your bikini at the beach if you're going on a trip and not have to worry, or you're going to fit into that wedding dress, and you might even have to get it tailored a second time because it's too loose. You've lost more weight than you thought. So we want to be careful with how we present that, but we want to use some imagery. And we can talk about, in another course, we actually talk about what types of questions we can ask if we're in a sales environment, and what type of copy we can write in our marketing messages to really tap into that and to use some imagery to get them to see themselves as empowered to make this change. The barriers that those level 2s are going to have are going to be very similar. It's hard to describe all of them. Again, in an execution plan, you're going to get more detailed with what those barriers are, but the barriers to self might be very similar. They just haven't been in a gym for a long time, so they might be a little bit intimidated. They don't have a lot of time. The barriers to the product or service, a lot of times are going to be finances, but there are a lot of other barriers. Like, I'll give you a real quick example of this one. When I was managing trainers, I had one of my trainers who just had a problem getting to work on time. And so I remember this lady had, I think, 6 sessions with the trainer. The client showed up for, I think, 3 sessions with the trainer, and then had 3 sessions left, but never came back. And that trainer just kept trying to call her, and I kind of asked, how did things go? And the trainer said, I thought everything went well. I thought she was gonna, buy more sessions even, but I can't get a hold of her now. She never came back. So I tried calling her a few times, and after 2 or 3 times, I was able to finally get a hold of her. And I just, as a manager, said, hey, I saw that you came in a few times and I hadn't seen you, and my job is really to help people make fitness stick. And I just wanted to know what your experience was like. And here's what she told me. She said, I like the trainer that you set me up with. The problem was he was late the first session. Second session, he kind of walked in right at the same time as me. And then the third session, late again. Now, she didn't want to say anything to him because, we as human beings oftentimes don't like confrontation, but the customer or the client trainer interaction is one where clients don't oftentimes want to have any type of confrontation with their trainer. So what do you think they do? Instead of having confrontation, they just end up quitting. They just don't come anymore. They don't want to deal with that type of confrontation. So in that situation, the barrier to the product or service was not money, because she was going to buy more sessions. She had the intention to buy more sessions until the trainer was late. So the barrier for that was being late. And here's where Rick has a course on branding, and he talks about what a successful, strong brand is. And we get into the elements of value in a lot of our other courses. This is where this becomes so important, because if you want to create a strong brand that really acts as a magnet to get clients, to get customers, you have to be consistent in the way that you're perceived by your customers. You need to use the elements of value in order to not give them reasons to quit. You want to provide a product or a service better than everyone else and different than everyone else. Because by doing so, you're getting your customer, your client, from the before state to the after state better than anyone else. Because remember the 4 things that people are considering. Does your product or service solve my problem? Are you able to do it better than anyone else? You communicate it better than anyone else? And do I trust you? Now let's talk about that level 3 type of customer, the one who's been exercising for a long period of time. They're an enthusiast, maybe they're a gym rat. Oftentimes what I hear from personal trainers about that type of customer is it's really hard to sell training to that type of person. And I agree, it can be very difficult to sell personal training to that level 3 type of customer who's in great shape probably and has been exercising for a long period of time. But I want you to consider something. I want to go back to the different phases that we go through when we're deciding whether or not we're going to change, whether or not we're going to buy a product or a service. If you think about the 6 different phases that we go through, the first phase is unaware. The next phase is pain aware. Now, think about a level 3. They're working out, they're exercising consistently. What I would argue is they're in the unaware phase. But that doesn't mean that there aren't pains that they might need to consider. One of the things that we need to understand as fitness professionals is sometimes the pain already exists for them, as it does for a level 1, as it does for a level 2. Other times we need to create awareness of the pain. As I mentioned, sometimes our people are in a pain state, and so they're ready to make a change in their life. So they start looking for solutions, they start looking for products. Some of the best companies, the most innovative entrepreneurs don't just solve the problems that exist for someone. What they do is they create awareness of the pain, create awareness of the problems, both external problems and internal problems, and then they communicate messages, or they create their sales, marketing, and branding messages to solve that problem that they just created in the mind of the customer. An example of this, I'll go back to, I just think one of the best brands of all time, which is Apple. And if you think about the iPhone, They created the iPhone and essentially said, you need this iPhone. So we didn't know we needed the iPhone until Steve Jobs created the iPhone. So what they did is they created awareness of the problem, and then they solved the problem better than anyone else. When we think about a level 3, sometimes we have to do a very similar thing. They're exercising consistently, and they might be thinking, well, I don't have any problems. I'm in great shape. I'm doing great. But we have to be thinking about, well, what problems might be there that they're not aware of? They're unaware of something. So we might say something like, hey, you're in great shape, obviously. One of the things that happens when people work out as much as you do, and now notice what I'm doing with this message. And again, this isn't a course where we're going to get into how to create those messages. We do those in other courses, but I just want to give you an example. What if I said to that level 3, one of the things that happens when someone works out as much as you do is you start to develop muscle imbalances. You start to develop muscles that are stronger in some parts of your body and weaker in other parts of your body. Or you might say something like, one of the things that happens when someone works out as much as you do is the form starts to be affected because you're lifting so much weight. One of the things I do with my clients is I give them programs to increase the strength of all the small muscles that support the large muscles so that they're able to lift more weight more consistently because those large muscles are now supported. Very simple little example that I gave there, but if you notice what I did is I started with the problem. The problem was, hey, one of the things that happens when someone lifts as much as you do is, your large muscles get really large and strong, but your small muscles might be weak. And if your small muscles, your supporting muscles are weak, the large muscles aren't able to lift as much weight. One of the things I do with my clients is I create programs to increase the strength of all the supporting muscles so that my clients can lift more weight more times. I'd love to show you some of those. Maybe I might say if I'm talking to this person, I'd love to show you some of those and see how they feel for you. And if you notice, again, what I did there is I started with the problems that might exist for that person that they're not aware of. And we can go really hundreds of different directions if we wanted to do this, but sometimes you have to think of, how can I create awareness of a problem that that person is not currently aware of? That doesn't mean they're going to buy from you right then and there, but notice what you've done. You've kind of just planted a seed in their mind that they might have a problem, and you're the trainer or you're the fitness professional who's able to solve it. And they start considering that, and now you can kind of coach that conversion with either your sales messages or your marketing messages to get them to the point where they actually say, you know what, I'm aware of this pain, and now I'm looking for solutions, and they're obviously going to be looking at you in that scenario. Another example of this might be, when I was, especially later in my personal training career, before I got into management and became an educator, I was working with a lot of golfers. And a lot of times I'd have these golfers who were in good shape, and they'd come into the gym and they do different things, and they just didn't think that they needed a trainer. There was no pain in their mind. So one of the things I would do is I would approach those types of people, and I would just say things like, hey, I see you in here all the time and you're doing a great job. And a compliment goes really far. And if you go through my prospecting course, we talk about how to approach people when we're on the floor in a way that drops their walls as opposed to makes their walls go up. But a compliment does it really well. I might say, hey, I see you in here all the time. You're doing a great job. One of the things that happens with golfers is, because of the nature of your sport, the movements that you make, you start to have low back pain, low back problems that not only affects how straight you hit the ball, but it also affects how long you can golf into throughout your life. Because as pain starts to happen, you can't golf as often. Then I might give them a solution. One of the things that I do with my clients is I give them not only flexibility, but strengthening programs for all the core and the low back musculature so that my clients can not only move more freely, hit the ball straighter, but also have less pain so they're able to golf with absolutely no pain and golf until they're in their 80s, 90s, and even 100s. So I gave an example, and what I want you to see there is I talked about their problems. I created awareness of a problem. You always want to be talking about your clients' problems. I think one of the biggest mistakes that salespeople in general make, but I see it very frequently in the fitness industry, is when we try to sell someone our product or service, or we create marketing about our product or service, Our marketing is all about our product or our service. Our sales is all about our product or service. We'll talk about ourselves, how great we are, how we're always on time. We have 5, 10 different certifications. And what that does in the mind of the customer is it doesn't make them see how you're going to solve their problem. It's just all about your product or service, and you just are going to be perceived as a salesperson. So remember, when we're creating sales, marketing, and branding, we need to make sure we're positioning ourselves as a guide, not as a hero. And I know we're going to get into this in other courses as well, but as a guide is someone who talks about the problems that exist for the customer or create awareness of the problems, then talk about how you solve that exact problem better than anyone else, and then you could talk about the future state for that individual that you're speaking with. So without getting into too much detail, make sure that you're always positioning yourself as a guide, meaning you talk about the problems that the customer has or create awareness of those problems before you talk about how you solve it better than anyone else. Otherwise, you're always going to be perceived as a salesperson, and we do not trust salespeople. So that fourth thing that someone considers, do I trust this person, is not going to be there, and they're less likely to purchase from you.